How's it going, Twitch? Happy Easter. On behalf of East Asia Soft, welcome to today's stream. Today, I am continuing my playthrough of SeaBed, a eerie visual novel, and after what happened last week, I think that we could realistically expect something big to happen soon in this game. Maybe an explanation of what's going on, maybe not, but I feel like there's something big coming up. So, let's go ahead and hop straight into it, see what awaits us. So, we had just finished Chapter 5, hopping into Chapter 6. Back to Sachiko's perspective now. Also, yes, the webcam is back. I could hear the cry of cicadas around me. The hot, humid air felt heavy on my skin. A row of large trees extended in front of me. There was a slide connected to a jungle gym, a swing, a tire half buried in the ground, and a sandbox. I turned around and saw a row of tall trees behind me. They reminded me of cedars, but their leaves were flat and big. There was a green fence behind them, and beyond that fence there was a wide, deep ditch. I could see the bottom from here, but I could tell there was a river, roughly 5 meters deep, running through it. The park area was shaped like a shortcake, situated between the ditch and the road. I wonder if this is another dream. Whoa! Takako let out a shout as she dashed toward me. What? What? This has to be a dream, right? I caught her by the armpits and lifted her up, making her stop. She raised one of her hands in an attempt to imitate Superman. That's not what we're playing here. Disappointed, she dropped her arm. Do you know who I am? My bride! That's the girl who passed by me earlier, no? A shocking realization came over Takako, making her blink a few times. That's right. Good grief. I looked around the park, still holding Takako. There was a bunch of faded toys scattered in the sandbox. I couldn't tell whether the sun, partially hidden by the mountain range, was rising or setting. The sky had a light pink hue and only a few light clouds drifting on it. Let me down! I put her back on solid ground. Is there a bug you like, miss? I'll catch it for you. I don't need any insects. Then what do you want to play? Tag? I'd rather not. Oh, I could show you something great. She hurried over to the swings, climbed on the right one, and began swinging up and down. I followed her, but before I could reach her, she crouched down in preparation of a jump, then let go of the bars. She landed on the teal bar in front of the swing, but inertia carried her too far. She began tilting forward. How many times do you want to get hurt doing this? I caught her before she hit the ground. Thanks. I'll catch you a dragonfly in return. I really don't want any bugs. It's here! A large insect flew past my head. Takako chased after it. I watched her disappear into the distance, then pinched my hand. It hurt a bit. When I looked back at Takako, I saw her standing in place, gazing at a certain spot. She slowly extended her arm. Her hand suddenly moved and seized something. Got it! She rushed back toward me, carrying her prey. The dragonfly that flew past my head earlier now sat motionless in Takako's palm. Her fingers were holding down its wings, preventing it from moving. I caught a dragonfly! Did you actually catch it with your bare hands? It's the first time I managed to pull that off. Impressed? You're going to give it to your friend, correct? Yeah. You think she'll forgive me? Don't forget to bring her the doll, too. It's important to her. Okay. The small Takako pulled out an insect cage from the backpack under the slide and placed the dragonfly into it. She then shoved the cage back into her backpack. She put the doll in the backpack as well. I briefly glanced at my wristwatch. It was 6 o'clock. "Are you going home?" Takako asked as she returned. "Yes." "Let's play a bit more." "I wish I could, but I have to hurry back. I feel like I was in the middle of something important." "Aww." As Takako heaved a sigh of disappointment, I pinched my hand again. This time, I did it a bit harder. It felt no different from last time. I looked around the park and then up at the sky. Its color was an odd mix of purple and pink, the kind I'd never seen before. Do you know how I can leave?" I asked the small Takako. Takako shook her head. "I suppose you wouldn't." "If you got nowhere to go, you can come to my house." Takako pulled the hem of my skirt as I wondered what to do. I took a step forward toward her to avoid it getting stretched, but Takako, interpreting that as a sign of consent, began walking further. We left the park and passed the street with the tenement house at the corner. "It's go time? Oh, so something big is going to happen, Buster, is that what you're saying?" We left the park and passed the street with a tenement house at the corner, emerging on a slope stretching deep into the mountain. Or are you just saying it's go time because I'm playing SeaBed again? "Young Takako is so adorable, I need to hug her." I spotted a thick cable car wire above it. Turning around, I noticed that the houses behind me had disappeared, so she's definitely dreaming. Before I knew it, I was walking on a stone pavement. "Is this really the right way?" "Yeah, don't worry." I watched a cable car descend the slope. Its rear half was a box with seats and windows. It reminded me of a red tin can with wooden windows. It had various posters inside, each depicting different advertisements, ranging from movies to shoe shops. The empty cable car stopped on the rotating plate and turned around. Takako grabbed one of its rails and was about to get in. "Are we riding this?" "Yeah!" Takako got inside and climbed onto the long bench by the window. This is very similar to when they went to San Francisco in that flashback. I sat down next to Takako and glanced in the same direction as her. Colorful brick and concrete houses surrounded the slope we were ascending. The roofs lined up like stairs, serving as balconies for every higher building. "Is something the matter?" "Look." Takako looked at me, then pointed at a big window at the back of the car. I could see a harbor behind it. The slope we were ascending cleaved the western city in two, almost like Moses did the Red Sea in ancient times. Further beyond, a wide cobalt green sea stretched as far as the eye could see. A few vanilla-colored clouds drifted along in the blue sky above. "I went there with Sachiko the other day. We boarded a ship." Takako pointed at the lone island in the distance. "I've never been there." "Really? It was fun." Takako lowered herself down onto the bench. "You're good friends." "Yeah. One time I wanted to show her my new trick with stilts, but I fell and scraped my leg so much it started bleeding. She ended up taking me to the hospital." "Ah, those were pretty tall, weren't they? I should have known it was a bad idea when you needed to climb on the roof just to get them." The cable car passed under a large tree, the leaves of which cast gently flickering shadows. Takako took out the insect box from her bag and observed the dragonfly. After getting bored of that, she took out the doll and began moving its hands. "Let's play Shiratori." "Squirrel." "Lettuce." "Egg." "Giraffe." "Eagle." "Earthworm." "Mango." "Oat ball." "Lettuce." "Egg." "Giraffe." "Eagle." "Earthworm." "Mango." opal, lettuce, egg. Hey, you can't repeat them. You lose. Takako leaned against me as I gazed at the scenery beyond the window. Okay, that's hilarious. Her eyes were closed while she rocked back and forth with each bump. Are you sleeping? No. Is your house really that far? Don't worry. We passed under a large tree, the leaves of which cast gently flickering shadows. I went to a picnic with Sachiko. Just you two? Narasaki was there too. Sachiko made a lunchbox for each of us. Her egg omelet tasted really sweet. With that, Takako fell asleep on my shoulder. I looked out the car's front window and saw the vast cobalt blue sea in the distance. Turning around, I saw the exact same view behind us, western buildings and trees along the sea. The only difference between the two were the colors. Looking at Takako sleeping on my shoulder, I too closed my eyes in the gently swaying car. Feeling someone shake my shoulders, I opened my eyes. We're here! Still half asleep, I followed Takako out of the car. There was the sound of a bell, and the cable car began turning around. Here! Takako pulled me by the hand. The sensation of the ground changed, and as I shook off my drowsiness, I realized we were on a mountain path surrounded by tall trees. With the leaves above us blocking out most of the light, I couldn't quite make out how far the trail extended. We're almost there! After a short while, we reached a tunnel made of bricks and stones. We continued inside, the faint light behind us waning like a candle flame. The darker it got, the colder it felt inside, until it disappeared altogether. I'm lost. But all we did was walk in a straight line. You want to go back? Takako stopped, her hand still clutching mine. I picked a bunch of different paths, but I no longer remember which ones. I didn't notice at all. What do we do now? You have no idea where we are at all? It's dark here. Well, it certainly is. Well, I think it's safe to assume that was a dream. That's probably the first time in this whole game that I can safely say that was a dream. Oh, speaking of, you remember when we last saw Narasaki, she was out looking for Sachiko, and then all of a sudden she's here, so... What is going on? Every time somebody, like, something is up with Sachiko. Takako sees her, Narasaki sees her. When she's not there, something is up with her. Not to mention all those tips. Something is definitely up with her. Back to Narasaki's point of view. I walked across the shallow beach. The stars flickered in the water puddles as I stepped on them. However, the scenery would not change no matter how far I walked. It was either a starry sky or a starry sky with some holes repeating over and over. Well now, I stuck my right index finger into my mouth and bit down on it. It hurt. Glancing at one of the puddles, I saw the reflection of a woman with long black hair and black eyes staring back at me. I closed one of my eyes and so did she. I shifted my gaze back to the horizon. I stuck my hand in my pocket and fished out my car keys. They felt cold to the touch. I turned them a few times in my hand and continued towards the horizon. Suddenly I felt like I heard something. I took a few more steps, and the noise, a kind of static reminiscent of hearing tests, increased. I stopped and strained my ears to listen. The sound was coming from below. However, there was only a puddle of water at my feet, its surface reflecting a massive black cloud. Just when I looked up, the puddle suddenly swallowed me. Heavy rain poured all over me. I was still on the same shallow beach, except now it was in the middle of a storm. As I glanced at the black cloud, the rainfall grew in intensity. Following the apparent source of the sound, the place where it felt the loudest, I soon reached a tropical forest of sorts. I rushed there to escape the rain. Water trickled down my hair, getting into my eyes. Suddenly, I heard something from the woods. Is someone there? I spotted traces of footsteps in the direction the sound was coming from. I followed them, noticing some broken branches along the way as well. I stepped over a big set of roots rising from the ground and climbed the limestone rock blackened by the elements to find a hole splitting the path in two. It was the entrance to the cave, surrounded by ferns. Look how huge it is! I heard something reminiscent of human voices from within. Is someone there? I repeated my question. My words reverberated across the cave walls. I waited for a dozen or so seconds, but received no reply. I climbed down the hole. Having reached an area with a solid roof, the sound of rain from outside began to abate. Instead, I heard the scarce dripping of water. There were countless paths branching off in various directions in front of me. Some were too narrow for a person to pass, while others seemed good enough to drive a car through. All of them had complex shapes, like lava stones. I pressed forward, trying to find some even footing, when I heard disjointed voices from some of the tunnels. Wanted to show me? Fireflies! You mean, was told you wanted to see? I followed the voices until I saw a light beyond a large black rock. Ah! I heard a voice right by my ear. Whoa! As I stepped on a puddle of water, my leg got swallowed by it. The sensation was similar to missing a step on the stairs. I ended up losing my balance and plummeted down into a dark void. I opened my eyes, only to realize I was slowly sinking. As I regained control of my body, I extended my arms and landed at the bottom. The water was crystal clear. If one discounted the sense of weightlessness, this was hardly different from the inside of the cave. I exhaled a breath. It didn't feel uncomfortable at all. The air bubbles ascended, getting sucked toward the light coming from the hole I fell through. This... I heard a voice from beyond the water. There was a dark cave entrance right in the middle of the seabed. I turned around and began walking toward it. It felt like walking on clouds. Although I grew further away from the light coming from the hole, it painted the entire place pale blue, almost like it had simply melted into the water. I was moving onwards with one hand on the wall when I heard some voices again. Well, there's a window here. I could see the vegetables in the inner yard from here. There was a huge window covered up by the stairs, too. I wonder if they built them later. They must have been in quite a hurry when they did that. Few people nowadays think of modern architecture as superior. Oh, look at how small that door is. I wonder if it's a broom closet. Oh, it's locked. You can ask the landlord about it later. I'll do that. I wonder if it's this room. The plate matches the key at least. Let me see if it fits the lock. It's bigger than I thought. Concrete walls, huh? We could raise hell in here and no one would hear us. I'm not planning to do anything like that. I'll open the windows. All right. So, we're taking this one? Yep. Okay. We have to get our stuff then. Tomorrow's going to be a busy day. Indeed. I continued down the rocky path, sweeping my hands through the water. Are you there? My voice turned into bubbles, disappearing in the darkness above me. I realized the cave's ceiling had grown low enough for me to reach it. The path turned more uneven, so I slowed my pace and continued in careful steps. I spotted the silhouette of a crouching person in front of a large rock in the distance. As I drew closer, I realized it was just an old doll. Is there some significance to the doll? The path would grow narrow, then widen up again. However, the rock walls surrounding me on both sides remained the same. I completely lost sense of how far I'd walked. I could no longer hear anything besides the echo of the dripping water and my own footsteps. On the other side of the rock, there was a huge puddle of water. I also spotted a large hole in the rocks beyond it. Though I caught a glimpse of some green trees and a darkened sky beyond the hole, most of the view was blocked by the water pouring down through it like a waterfall. The ceiling rocks around it glimmered in a pale bluish hue. As a dark cloud passed by the hole, the ceiling lit up like a sky illuminated by stars. I realized that my body felt very heavy. The sensation of walking underwater faded, and I was once again back on solid ground. I stopped for a while to observe the blue stars, which formed no constellations whatsoever, as well as the puddle and the waterfall. The path ended here. I looked down into the water. It looked like a stairway continuing downward without end. I want to see it. I could have sworn I heard Kozue's voice. I'm too tired to go back now. I stepped into the water and was transported to a shining blue world. After the voices had ceased, I continued down the lone path for a while. Soon enough, I started hearing something in the distance again. It reminded me of a rock falling on something hard, or perhaps a chess piece swiftly being placed on a board. Remember that girl that was with us when we talked to Lily? Yes. Don't you think she's just like you when you were little? Really? In what way? Her unsociable attitude and quick wits. Actually, that part of you hasn't changed at all. When did you become like that? I think I was born this way. Takako had sociability for the both of us. Hi, Shardiel. Welcome to the stream. Happy Easter. And you were the brains for you both. That sounds about right. Suddenly, one of my legs sank into the ground. I saw a puddle black as ink as I glanced down. Beyond the slope, behind me, I saw a sparkling water surface. Above it fluttered the starlit sky. The black puddle by my feet grew bigger, separating from water like oil. The heavy water, like a black mirror, gave a clear reflection of my body. I tried stepping forward, creating a ripple in the blackness, and felt my shoe press against the hard, rocky bottom underneath it. I put my other leg into the blackness. I felt like I had stepped into the deep sea. There was solid ground at my feet, yet I continued sinking. Oh, okay. Well, there you go, Shardiel. What's up? Not much. Continuing my playthrough of this game, which I really like and also really confuses me. I think I'll call it a mystery novel. The blackness enveloped me, robbing me of sight. However, the ground evened out, making it easier to walk forward. I strained my ears and heard another sound. It reminded me of the clanging of dishes. It smells great, but I like it when it's more sweet. Why would you want to ruin the taste of something this delicious? This flavor might have been a bit too early for you, Takako. I heard Sachiko Takako and the voice of another woman I didn't know. Instant tea is already more than good enough for her. Is that still apple tea? Yeah, Sachiko brings it home sometimes. It's a bit too sweet, but it's not bad for the price. And this is the instant green tea, right? Yep. It only has Ceylon written on the label. Ceylon? Oh, you mean Sri Lanka? Speaking of brand teas from Sri Lanka, Five Kinds is a good one. Whoa, that's a cool name. Sounds almost like some superhero show. It refers to 5 tea leaves. Uva, Candy, Nuwara, Elia, Dimbala, and Ruhuna. Boy, am I bad at those. It sounds like Darjeeling tea. Ranger Red! That's the only color it has, though. Does the background behind you explode when you drink your apple tea? Wouldn't it be a problem if you could buy something that dangerous so easily? We should blackmail them and claim the entire tea shop for ourselves. Yeah! You two are starting to lose me. And it's not even spring yet. Why is Nagasaki seeing these scenes play out? She saw Fumi. She has no idea who Fumi is, but she sees her, like... I have a theory about what's going on, and I don't like it. The voices grew louder as I continued, then began to fade as though I had just walked past them. Then the voices completely ceased. I strained my ears again, but could no longer hear a thing. I tried saying something myself, but it had no effect. I couldn't perceive anything besides the ground at my feet, and I didn't even know how wide this cave was right now. After confirming the condition of my auditory landscape, I started walking again. Something akin to mist appeared in the darkness in front of me. It looked kind of red and blue at the same time. As I followed it with my eyes, a small girl appeared in the corner of my eye and dashed further into the cave. She looked like Takako in her childhood. I didn't actually see her directly. It was just a reflection on the cave wall. I narrowed my eyes while still looking at that huge black mirror when a light suddenly lit up behind me. Its reflection on the wall momentarily rendered me blind. Now it's Sachiko's perspective. I turned the page. The rays of the evening sun filtered in through the window of the dead, silent classroom. The white curtains fluttered as a gust of cold wind swept into the room through the open window, cooling my cheeks. So, kind of going all over the place again. I glanced at the clock. I could hear a plane and the voices of children in the distance. Let's do this. Or, let's do this! I suddenly heard Takako's voice from outside. Well? Wow, it actually got stuck in the trunk. I looked down from the window to see Takako and one of our classmates throwing something at a cherry blossom tree behind the judo hall. What on earth are you two doing there? Our English teacher appeared from within the school building. Oh shit! Everyone around the tree scattered like startled animals. The teacher went after Takako, who seemed to be the most likely ringleader, and caught her by the collar. He then pulled her back into the building. I glanced at the clock again and returned to my book. After about 50 pages, I heard footsteps in the corridor. Ha! Takako entered the classroom with a sigh. An adult Takako now. This has to be a flashback to a real thing that happened. Huh? I thought you already left, Sachiko. I forgot my keys, so I need to wait until my sister gets home. I see. Let's go home together, then. She sat down in her seat, which was right in front of mine. Oh, that's right. I wanted you to help me with my homework. But we didn't get anything today. I have to write a written apology. In English. What did you do this time? Takako let out a small steel plate from her skirt pocket and handed it to me. The rest got confiscated. Is that the shuriken you bought during our last school trip? I used the whetstone in the industrial arts room to sharpen them. Oh, and I wouldn't recommend touching the edges. The edges of the steel glimmered in a sharp silver light. Are you serious? The teachers got angry at me when I tested them on a tree. Of course they did. Are you crazy? I do feel sorry, okay? Takako let out a groan. So, what exactly happened with the teachers there? They said that the trees can start to rot if you damage their bark. That's all? And they told me to consider how I'd feel if someone threw these things at me. And did you? Takako clutched her stomach and fell to her knees. Are you still planning to keep that up? No? Then you don't need this anymore. I folded my handkerchief around the shuriken and put it in my bag. Possession of a deadly... Oh, Takako with a shuriken? I will run for the hills. Huh? What are you talking... Why are you taking it? I'll bring it to the teacher's room. They can do away with it like they did with the rest. Wait! You don't have a use for it anymore, do you? It has sentimental value. I know you won't be able to resist if it's right in front of your eyes. She considered me with imploring eyes for a few moments, then clutched her head and collapsed onto the desk with her upper body. You've no idea how long it took to sharpen them. She let out another groan. You're always having fun. Takako lazily raised her face with her upper body still on the desk. And you're not? Aside from studying, not really. I don't like to be around so many people. Really? Yes. The sound of a bat hitting a ball reached us from the baseball field. The school buildings beyond the window, the cherry blossoms around them, and the scenery of the town in the distance had all been painted orange by the evening sun. So that has to be a flashback, because last we saw Sachiko, she was having a dream being taken somewhere by young Takako. That was a fun flashback, though. Yeah, here we go. Back to the dream again. Looking around, I saw brick walls in the darkness. One of them had a hole through which I could see some greenery. I approached and tried touching the leaves, but my hand passed through them like they were fog. After that, they immediately disappeared. Also, man, this music is just top-notch. Very mood-setting. I'm scared. Takako clasped the hem of my skirt with both of her hands. I can't walk like this. I stuck my hands under her armpits and lifted her up. That's adorable. I took a few steps back and lowered myself onto a big rock, ending up with Takako on my lap. We're not walking anymore? We're just taking a short break. I could feel Takako wriggle on my knees, even though I couldn't see her. The sound of dripping water reverberated across the tunnel's walls. I heard a gulp. Are you thirsty? Thanks. I reached out towards her and took a thermos bottle lid from her. The liquid inside was cool, but I couldn't quite tell the taste. Did you have tea in this? It was either tea, water, or juice. I took another sip. If it was water, it should have been tasteless. If it was tea, there should have been a bitter aftertaste. And juice should have had a certain sweetness to it. I forgot. I can't tell either. After I finished the contents of the lid, I placed it on Takako's head for her to take it away. Want more? I'm fine. I felt Takako move on my lap again. What's wrong? Let's go. Did you remember the correct way? No, but... Then it's okay. Let's rest for a while longer. Staring into the darkness, I spotted something in the corner of my eye that reminded me of letters. I shifted my gaze to them, but they blurred together and disappeared like water paint. That's a real thing. When you dream, you can't read because it uses the other side of your brain from what you used to dream. Try and read anything in a dream, you can't do it. Or if you can, it'll change what it looks like within just a few seconds. Are you angry? Takako asked. Why do you think that? Well, we got lost because of me. I'm not angry. Really? Don't worry, it shouldn't be that hard to get out of here. But yeah, I'm not angry. But you never think anything you do through. You should keep that in mind next time. I found Takako's face in the darkness and seized her cheeks. Okay. I let her go. I'm hungry. Don't you have some snacks in your bag? Oh, right. Takako picked up her backpack. The sound of a zipper followed soon after. Huh? You ran out? No, there's some candies inside. Here you go. Takako handed me a candy. I felt something hard and round being placed into my palm. Takako bit through her own with an audible crunch. I popped the candy into my mouth. It had a sweet artificial aroma, but I couldn't identify exactly which fruit it was supposed to be. Takako continued munching away on her candy. After a while, she stopped moving, and I could hear her breathing even out. I could hear her breathing even out as she dozed off. All of a sudden, I heard approaching footsteps. Is it Narasaki? Turning toward the source of the sound, I saw a dim light in the distance. It grew bigger as the footsteps drew closer, making my eyes hurt. It is! Through my narrowed eyes, I could make out Narasaki with a lighter in hand. She spotted us and raised her hand. Hey! Narasaki? It took me a while to find you. You were looking for me? Yep. Narasaki's white coat was drenched in water, making her curves stand out more than usual. What happened to you? What happened to you? You're completely soaked. I had a few adventures on my way here. Narasaki smiled, and I stared at the water drops drip from her hair. She placed the lighter on the ground and sat down on a rock in front of me. Were you worried about me? Yeah, I thought you might be in trouble again. You truly are obsessed with your work. It's not like I have anything else to do. Okay, this is interesting. Either all three of them are dreaming, or, again, I got a theory. Oh, man. Oh, I see Takako's here too. Long time no see. Upon noticing Takako, she quickly waved in her direction. I stared at Narasaki. She returned it with a questioning look. I just thought it was kind of odd to see you together like this. Narasaki made a characteristically faint smile. Time doesn't exist here, so the unusual is actually not so unusual at all. Because we're in a dream? Not exactly. How is this not a dream? Well, it's not like I comprehend everything about this phenomenon either, but there are a few crucial things I noticed that separate it from a dream. I'd say this is simply a place where the present and the past cross. What is that supposed to mean? Okay, let me start from explaining how it's different from a dream. Didn't you feel anything unusual on your way to this place? I retraced my steps with the small Takako. I thought it was just another dream at first, but I could remember I was in Nane's mansion just before, and it feels a bit too realistic. I don't know how to put it. You've got your full wits about you, Nagasaki added. Yes, that's it. It's too realistic for a dream, but I can tell it cannot be real. It's as though there's a translucent membrane separating me from it. I guess it feels a bit like when you hypnotized me. Exactly. My hypothesis partially recreated this exact same state. So this is neither a dream nor reality? Yeah. Well, I guess it still depends on your definition of a dream. Oh? Nagasaki inhaled a breath. Okay then. Let me explain both this place and your condition. I still have many questions, but I decided not to interrupt her. Nagasaki made a small nod, then opened her mouth. For starters, I wouldn't say you're awake right now. Your condition is similar to sleeping or being hypnotized, but it's not entirely like that. As I've mentioned before, your consciousness is fully alert. Now, when you sleep or are hypnotized, your consciousness still grows foggy and becomes receptive to any information with little scrutiny. However, you keep questioning and analyzing everything around you right now, correct? In a way, you could say you somehow ended up in a dream with your consciousness unaffected. It's not something that happens often, though, so I wouldn't bet on it. Anyway, that's the gist of it. Nagasaki showed me her hand and spread her fingers apart. Let's say each of these fingers represents one of the 5 senses, while the palm is the mind. When you're awake, your hand is open, like this. Your fingers are like antennas, transferring information to your mind from the outside world. That's a good way of putting it. Nagasaki closed the gaps between her fingers. When you sleep, your antennas are closed like this. You need to fold them up when your brain organizes the information you've received. Next, she made a fist. And this is your current situation. Your senses have changed directions and are pointing inward. They are functioning properly but aren't directed outside. They are trying to get information from inside your mind. Can I ask something? Yeah? When you talk about the senses, you mean sight, hearing, touch, and so on, right? How can they face inwards? My eyes, ears, skin, and so on only exist in the real world, right? Of course. It's not your actual sense organs that are inverted, but the channels that the information travels through. Just think of it as a metaphor or whatever, she added. Okay. I gave her a hesitant answer. I tried imagining what she meant. Nagasaki said nothing over that time, so I asked another question. So if my senses are inverted right now, what about everything I'm sensing here? It's neither real nor a dream, correct? Nagasaki gestured toward her surroundings. That's one more thing I need to explain. About this place and where it actually is. Do you remember how we discussed the alternate world in your head when you were talking about the symptoms of your hallucinations? I remembered that event from the real world. It was something I discussed with Nagasaki right after waking up from a nap in the rest area at the end of the corridor in Nane's mansion. Was it when you said that the directions would all be inverted? Yes, and that's this place. You're perceiving that alternate world right now. I tried understanding what she said, but only ended up with more questions. What kind of world was this supposed to be? Why did it exist in the first place? What was its purpose? Did it even have any? And why was I here right now? Confused by that endless stream of questions, I began to see the contours of my surroundings as increasingly blurry. Or perhaps I was merely imagining things. Either way, after a blink, everything had returned to normal. It must have been caused by the darkness around us. I glanced at Takako, still resting on my knees, then at my own arms, cradling her. What is happening to me in the real world? Your condition is similar to being lightly hypnotized right now. It's actually a bit problematic, to tell the truth. You've already experienced hypnosis before, so you could probably tell, but some of the memories inaccessible during normal sleep get unlocked in this condition. A professional usually guides you to the right direction while you're in that state, but right now, you have no one guiding you. If you stay here for too long, your memories might get all over the place and won't return to their proper location. And without anyone guiding you, there's no one to wake you up either. That's a little scary. Wouldn't someone just notice I was sleeping for too long and wake me up? As long as your consciousness is in here, you won't wake up, no matter what they do. Then what am I supposed to do to come back? Relax. It's actually not that hard. For starters, you've got to draw your consciousness away from here. And the easiest way to do that is simply to sleep. It might be a bit uncomfortable in a place like this, but what can you do? Is there anything else? I'll carry the real you to your bed so you can wake up in your usual place. What, did Narasaki hypnotize herself to reach Sachiko? I imagine Narasaki carrying me on her back. No one had done that to me since I was a kid, so it felt a bit embarrassing. But I was asleep, so I probably wouldn't remember it anyway. That's all? Yep, said Narasaki. What happens if my memories can't return to their proper location? You said it was odd to see me and the young Takako together. If you stay in here for too long, it'll stop seeming that way to you. And it'll get harder and harder to remember reality. In the end, you might even start thinking of reality as the dream, and this world as real. I tried imagining what it would mean to never return. This wasn't a dream, but a world inside my mind. It was different from sleeping, but at the same time very similar to it. A dream you cannot wake up from. If I stayed here for too long, I wouldn't be able to come back. There were still many things that didn't make sense to me. This world was ambiguous and uncertain, almost like a fairy tale. Was it because half my brain was asleep or something? Narasaki waited for my reaction with a gentle expression. It's okay. I know what's on your mind. I think. Your current condition is something akin to having been swallowed by a massive wave and being unable to tell up from down. Besides, your senses are dulled even further in a dark place like this. It's because of this place that I have trouble following this? Yes. Narasaki looked around the darkness. The lighter illuminated the rock wall surrounding us. The rocks and the darkness made complex patterns at the boundary of the light. I watched them until they turned into something akin to a kaleidoscope. I wonder how I ended up like this. I don't know the details. That's something I'd like to know myself. Narasaki turned to me. Takako was sleeping on my lap. I tried remembering the path I took to reach this place, but the cable car was the furthest my memories would go. Everything before that point was covered by a thick fog. Not that it mattered if I remembered the beginning. I doubted that the path I took in this world had much of a connection to the cause which likely happened in reality. If you're looking for a clue, you shouldn't look for it within the dream. I felt as though she read my mind, but she continued before I could say anything. Did Nane say something to you? Nane? An image of a person materialized in my mind. The new friend I made. She strongly reminded me of Takako. That's right. I was talking to her. I placed my arm on Takako's hair and tried remembering what happened. She said she wanted me to live with her in the mansion. Narasaki slowly nodded. When I said nothing else, she inhaled a breath and closed her eyes. That doesn't sound too bad. I suppose so. I stroked Takako's hair. I'm sorry for making you worry like this. Don't be. I'm the one who should have paid more attention to you. I heard a drop of water fall in the distance. Why did you go to such a dark cave anyway? I followed her. I gave Takako's head a pat, which made her lightly squirm in her sleep. This brings back memories. Yes, she'd always take me to odd places and we'd get lost. I've been meaning to ask, but why do you keep following her then? I don't know. I was afraid to let her go by herself, and I suppose I preferred spending time with her to being alone. I see. And I always scold her when that happens. We were just discussing that before you came. And what did you two extrapolate from this situation? If you go into a dark place following just your instincts, you'll get lost. That makes sense. I know a few words alone won't change her. Not to mention, she was particularly reckless during this period. She's still little. She can't differentiate between do's and don'ts just yet. I had just realized something. When she was little, Takako might have actually been testing herself. I still wish she'd be more cautious, though. You were always the cautious one. You appeared calm and thoughtful, even though you didn't know much more than her. Was I really like that? Yeah. Most little children don't know much about the world, which is why they're always so curious about everything. They have yet to get hurt and know fear, which leads to them to want to try all sorts of things. Takako slept with her mouth open against my chest, looking kind of foolish. Like trying on stilts that are too large, only to lose your balance and crash to the ground. That's the kind of kid she was. Indeed. This is how kids learn about the world around them. She'll calm down eventually. Takako had always been interested in everything, no matter how old she got. I, on the other hand, had very few interests, like you've said before. Takako closed her mouth with a silly sound and began squirming on top of me again. I see. Perhaps I was just curious why Takako was so excited about everything. I looked down to see Takako's small hand on my chest. Her tiny chest rose up and down in sync with her breathing. I wonder where she was trying to take me this time. She didn't tell you? She said she was taking me home, but it didn't seem like it was Takako's old house. Not the one I'm familiar with, anyway. I'm not sure if she was telling the truth either. On the other end of the light, Nagasaki stooped down a little and joined her hands on her knees, then separated them again a few times. It's true that Takako's sanatorium is there on the other end of this tunnel. Why do you know that? I used to work there, said Nagasaki in a nonchalant tone, all the while fixing her eyes on me. Excuse me, what? You're just gonna drop that on me out of nowhere? I had many things I wanted to ask her, but they all disappeared from my mind before I could put them into words. My head just wouldn't function properly. Nagasaki was the first to speak up. You want to be with her forever? I looked at her and shook my head. If you're worried, I imagine other people would be worried about me just the same. That's not a problem. If you want to remain here, I'll take care of the other side. What do you mean, take care? I'd inconvenience a lot of people if I just remained unconscious for the rest of my life. That's not as big of an issue as you think. If you simply dispel the state of hypnosis from your body, it won't be that different from the real you, even if your consciousness remains here. It'd be capable of everything you were. You just wouldn't be conscious of it. How can it be like me if my consciousness is not there? People can survive without a consciousness just fine. Do you remember how you ate your dinner a week ago? What kind of clothes you wore? Your consciousness already doesn't register most of the things you do, nor do others. And even you, as the main consciousness, can't figure out how you ended up in this condition. You could switch out a person with a hollow robot. You wouldn't be able to tell the difference most of the time. Not unless you know the person extremely well. Nagasaki continued as I fell silent. As such, you should just do what you want. Now that all the doors of your memories are open, you could return to any place you wish. You can attend school with Takako again. Nagasaki considered the darkness to the right. The lighter illuminated the right half of Nagasaki's cheeks. Then she shifted her gaze to the darkness behind me. If you go over there, you'll get to the sanatorium she currently resides at. School, huh? I enjoyed staying in the classroom after everyone had gone home or to their clubs, just reading books on my own. Sometimes I could hear the lousy sounds of someone practicing the trumpet in the music room, or the racket of the boys playing football or baseball on the athletics field. I grew fond of that bustling but nonetheless calm atmosphere. I only realized that after I graduated, and the time I spent alone increased. You can come back. Takako will be there too. The boisterous atmosphere I love possesses a sense of change. Everyone at school had goals and dreams. They changed and evolved to achieve them. Going back there with Takako would mean returning to a stagnant environment. She would be bored to death by it all. More than anything, she loves the new, the fresh. Perhaps you're right. Then how about over there? Her distant gaze returned to me. I don't know, but I still feel like that wouldn't be right. Both places exist only in my mind, so there'd be little difference between them anyway. Takako's sanatorium is only in her mind? I realized Narasaki's eyes had narrowed as though she was scrutinizing me. Then again, it could also have been just the illusion of the dim, flickering light. No, that place alone is slightly different. It's designed so that Takako, who likes new things, wouldn't get bored. Narasaki closed her mouth. I looked up and saw only darkness. I couldn't make out the ceiling. I imagined the sanatorium Takako stayed at within that darkness. I learned that Takako's here, and that's good enough for me. If that's okay with you, I have nothing else to say, said Narasaki. Let's get out of here then, she added. There's something else I'd like to ask you. Okay, but asking something about Takako or myself would be fairly pointless. Why? You'll forget everything the moment you wake up. Are you going? Yeah, it's not like time on the other side has stopped. You wouldn't want to catch a cold, would you? Narasaki stood up and patted her coat to see if it had dried up. It had, which didn't particularly surprise me. So how do we leave? I'll walk out. You should just go to sleep if you start feeling drowsy. That's all I need to do? Yep. I'll leave the lighter with you. Having stayed in this darkness for so long, it's possible your consciousness might melt away or something before you even get the chance to grow sleepy. Don't leave this area, okay? Okay. Narasaki nodded. I realized something by coming here. The reason I made up that story about Takako going missing, I probably couldn't acknowledge this Takako was no longer here. Why do you think that? I glanced at the tiny, sleeping Takako. Because it hurts. A lot. I stroked Takako's hair. I see. Narasaki? I wanted to ask her what she thought of it, but quickly changed my mind. It's important what I think, isn't it? Yep. Well then. Narasaki turned toward the darkness. Are you going to be okay? It's no big deal. Narasaki smiled. Is there anything else bothering you? No. I'm sure you'll be fine no matter what happens. Or, swap. I will. Don't you need any light? My eyes have gotten used to the dark by now. I see. Good night, and sweet dreams. Thanks. Again, I got a theory and I don't like it. Narasaki waved me goodbye and disappeared into the darkness. Her footsteps grew distant until I could no longer hear them. The light seemed to have grown somewhat smaller compared to when Narasaki was here. So, is she going to have a conversation with Takako before she goes to sleep, or is she just going to go to sleep and leave Takako sleeping? Aww, it's so adorable! Our voices might have grown too loud as Takako began lightly squirming on Sachiko's lap. Sachiko put her hand on Takako's head, making her calm down. Perhaps I was just curious why Takako was so excited about everything. I could see Takako's closed eyelids through Sachiko's hands. They relaxed for a second and seemed about to open but closed tight again. Her ponytail cast a long shadow in the lighter's light. I felt my body grow heavy as I observed her. I could really go for a drink. Perhaps. I slowly stood up, feeling like a statue made of stone. I should be on my way. So how do we leave? I'll walk out. You should just go back to sleep if you start feeling drowsy. That's all I need to do? Yeah. I'll leave the lighter with you. Having stayed in this darkness for so long, it's possible your consciousness might melt away or something before you even get the chance to grow sleepy. Don't leave this area, okay? Okay. Well then. I turned toward the darkness. Are you going to be okay? Sachiko asked. It's no big deal. Is there something else bothering you? No. I'm sure you'll be fine no matter what happens. I will. Don't you need any light? My eyes have gotten used to the dark by now. I see. Good night, and sweet dreams. Thanks. I walked for a while, then glanced back. The light had turned into a vague orange dot in the distance. As I continued on, it began moving toward the left before completely disappearing, almost like the setting sun. Possession of deadly cuteness, right? Thank you, somebody who speaks plain English. From here on out, I'd be in complete darkness. The floor was the first thing that disappeared from my vision. I couldn't even tell if I was ascending or descending the slope. I glanced down to realize I couldn't see my legs anymore. The darkness crawled up and up until I couldn't even see the tip of my nose. With my eyes completely unable to perceive light, I had no way of telling where I was. I strained my senses to try and feel for something, but all I managed to discern was the thick darkness pressing heavy against my skin. The more I walked, the heavier it got. I remembered a TV program where they carried out an experiment by submerging a water bottle and a ball in the sea. Both ended up crushed by water pressure. I felt as though the darkness was seeping into me through my eyes and skin. It was slowing my pace. I feared it might immobilize me completely. I continued pressing forward with all my strength when an image appeared in the darkness. I turned my face away and closed my eyes to let it pass. However, the image wasn't created by the light, but my own mind. Why was she afraid of it? I could hear the cry of cicadas around me. There was a small mountain of sand piled up in the middle of the sandbox with a tunnel passing right through it. Countless water canals surrounded it on all sides. Finishing her masterpiece, Takako stood up and shook the sand off her hands. Why is Sachiko wearing Takako's outfit? She turned to the water supply Sachiko was in front of. Sachiko had a doll and a towel in her hands. What are you doing? She was wiping the doll's face with a wet towel. Her face got dirty. Did you get it off? It's not working. There were some visible brown stains on the face of Sachiko's doll. Let's ask the nurse. Nurse! Takako let out a loud shout. What happened? A young woman who had been tidying up the toys scattered inside the building turned to Takako with a yellow toy car in hand. The doll got dirty. Can you get it cleaned up? The somewhat feisty-looking woman approached them and looked at Sachiko's doll all over Takako's head. This looks like a stain. I guess it'd be possible to wash it out if you undid the sewing, but then it might actually fall apart. Sachiko's fingers clutched the doll tighter. You can't fix it? I don't think it's worth the risk. Sachiko considered the doll's face for a long while. Make sure to take care of it if you want to keep playing with her. The nurse gently patted Sachiko's head a few times. And this is something from Narasaki's mind? Memories were leaking forth from the deepest corner of my mind, from the very boundary of the conscious and the subconscious. As the vision paused, I instead focused my senses on my limbs. I balled my hand into a fist with my strength, successfully swaying my consciousness away from that memory. With that, I once again returned to the pitch black darkness. It seemed I had stopped before I realized. I didn't know how long I was lost in that memory. When I resumed walking, I couldn't even tell if it was really moving or not. Before long, I could no longer sense my body at all. Well now, I said, unable to tell if I was really hearing my own words or if they came back from some distant memory again. It felt as though my arms and legs had melted into the darkness. Perhaps I had returned to being just a doll, like in those memories. I inhaled a deep breath, then slowly let it out. I remembered how I talked to Sachiko just earlier. She said it was odd to see me and Takako together. In that moment, I felt something different about her. Her expressions and body language seemed to have grown richer. However, I couldn't tell what that meant. I wondered if I should tell her, but in the end, I decided not to. The lighter's light had been flickering in front of Sachiko's eyes, and from her perspective, I should have been sitting right beyond it, ever so faintly, feeling returned to the tip of my toes and fingers. I calculated where my head was supposed to be from their position and fixed my eyes on the darkness. It was the real thing, complete darkness that melted the consciousness away. A phenomenon very similar to death. With some feeling having returned to my fingers, I began rhythmically moving them in an attempt to hypnotize myself. My legs moved unconsciously. My eyes could have seen anything, but my heart wouldn't move. All sorts of images appeared in front of my eyes. Nonetheless, my legs pushed me ever onwards. I'm not even going to say what my theory is until this game's over, because if I hope I'm wrong. But if I'm right, I'll just let you guys know I was right. Sachiko took a box off the top shelf of the closet, checked what was inside, then returned it to the same place. There were 2 more boxes in the closet. They had Takako's written on them in big letters. Sachiko pulled the biggest box into the room and looked at the many other boxes she had collected. There were already 2 transparent containers in front of the closet. She moved one of them with her leg and placed the box beside it. Inside the box, there were carving knives, a flute, a knitting set, and all sorts of other trinkets that Takako probably used back in school. Sachiko took them out of the box one by one, separating each item into 2 categories, important things and trash. She crushed the paper bag that was mixed with the other articles and put it into the trash container. There was a radio cassette player underneath it. She plugged it into the electrical socket and flipped its switch. A familiar melody filled the cold, gloomy room through the static. Sachiko turned around and looked at the bed. A doll she'd left on the edge had fallen down to the floor. Sachiko reached out and picked it up. Its lips had frozen into a perpetual, almost confrontational smile. Its somewhat sardonic expression as it looked over the room made the doll appear almost like it was eager to ask a question or two. "This too brings back memories, but I was looking for something else," said Sachiko as she turned the cassette player off. The melody stopped, and the cold, gloomy room once again fell into silence. At this point would be a great time to leave the room and don't look back. Yeah, I'm beginning to think that myself. Like I said, I have the feeling that something big was going to happen today, and I think this might be it. Sachiko took a blue rectangular-shaped can from another box. There were several radio cassettes inside. Back in middle school, Takako recorded her own radio show onto a cassette. I wonder which one it was. I believe it should have been a yellow tape. Sachiko took out a yellow cassette tape from the can and pushed it into the player. The cassette holder sounded a rusty yet vigorous click. Sachiko put her finger on the play button, hesitated for a few moments, then pressed it. An old pop song began playing from the player. As the song ended, Takako's voice suddenly rang out through the static. She said it was the first song she'd ever bought. Then she said it was her first recording and congratulated herself. Her show was basically her talking about her day and introducing music she liked. There was no guest corners or letter reading sessions, of course. I tried listening to a radio show at night, and it was much more fun than I expected. When I told Takako about it, she brought this tape to school the next day. She said it was really weird to hear her own voice coming from the recorder, and that she wanted to learn how to sing or something. Sachiko smiled. She then continued to talk about the history of the old cassette player. It used to be in Takako's house, and the two listened to the radio and the cassettes they bought. Sachiko paused and listened to the song Takako had introduced. She then began talking again. She shared her personal information with an almost gleeful expression. Sachiko continued listening to the tape with the doll in her lap. Before I realized it, she had closed her eyes. I couldn't tell if she was sleepy or just absorbed in the music. The tape suddenly stopped in the middle of Takako's speech. Sachiko opened her eyes and took the tape out. She flipped it around, put it back in the holder, and pressed the play button. Now that I think about it, we dropped by Takako's old house sometime after getting our first jobs, but the cassette player was no longer there by that time. It's not like we would have listened to it anyway, but... She faced the doll, but her eyes were gazing somewhere far away. She seemed to have been wondering why they weren't listening to music. If I could go back in time, I'd love to show her some better songs. Sachiko stood up and picked up the cassette player with one hand while holding the doll in the other. She then walked over to the bed. She sat down on its edge, placing the player on the side table and the doll by her pillow. Sachiko turned around and saw Takako on the bed. She extended her hand and touched her. I'll play my favorite song next. A very old Western song came to life through the speakers. I looked up the meaning of the lyrics. Everything has a meaning. Even if I don't have them now, time will bring me the answers. This is my favorite song. I don't know why, but I really like it. I hope I'll eventually come to understand why. What an idiot, Sachiko murmured. Nonetheless, she made a smile. Perhaps she recalled a time when they listened to that song together. Takako said it'd be the last song for the day, then began playing again. As the song came to an end and the tape stopped, the room fell completely silent. My heart is feeling wrenched right now. I don't know why. Sachiko realized that her doorbell was ringing. She didn't know whether she had fallen asleep or was simply too deep in thought, but by the time she glanced at the clock, it was already midnight. Still, the doorbell was definitely ringing. Sachiko noticed light coming from one of the rooms. She went to bed before sunset, so there was no way she'd turned on any of the lights. She glanced at the doll by the pillow and embraced it. She listened to the sound in her bitterly cold bed. The sound of the doorbell seemed to have grown distant. What am I supposed to do? I could have sworn she'd said something. However, both her words and the doorbell became barely audible to me. I felt as though everything I observed was happening somewhere far away in another world. I assume this is still Narasaki's perspective. I stepped on something and almost tripped. It felt softer than the rocky ground I'd been walking on so far. Upon kicking it, I heard a wooden thump. I prodded it a few more times with my toes, making it quiver. The quivering extended across the entire cave, turning into rumbling. 2 bright lights lit up as it traveled through the area. I looked down to see train tracks below my feet. I shaded my eyes with my hand and looked around, eventually spotting a hole in the wall. I stepped into the hole just moments before the giant object with headlights zoomed past me, the light from its windows flickering in the darkness. I couldn't make out any human-shaped silhouettes beyond said windows, though. After the train had passed, I climbed out of the hole and brushed the dust off my clothes. Looking in the direction the train went, I could see the lights of the outside world. I followed the train tracks outside, eventually emerging into a forest covered by fog. The moon perched in the dark blue sky right above the mountains and trees. I didn't know what time it was. Following the now abandoned railway line, I eventually made out the roof of the mansion looming beyond the trees. Okay, Narasaki's out of that, I think. Why does this look different? The familiar pathway led me back to the Western-style mansion I knew so well. As I emerged on the road leading to the library, I took a turn toward the entrance of the mansion's inner yard. The doors weren't locked. I turned the doorknob and silently stepped inside. The lights weren't on in the corridor leading to the lobby, so I couldn't see very far. Making my way down the corridor, I managed to reach the lobby. A grandfather clock towered to my right. Its arrows displayed the time as 4 o'clock. Thinking about how much time I had until sunrise, I was just about to ascend the stairway when I noticed the silhouette of someone behind the counter. "Good evening." The silhouette addressed me in Lily's voice. "Good evening." "Nana was really worried when you didn't show up for dinner." With no moonlight, it was darker inside the lobby than outside. As a result, even though my eyes had grown used to the dark outside, I still couldn't make her out very well in the room. And what's she doing up at 4 a.m. anyway? I couldn't tell what kind of expression she wore, but despite the reprimanding content of her words, I felt a gentle and caring air from her. I made a sour face. I felt like a kid that broke her curfew. "I'm sorry." Lily turned to the side and made a light yawn. "Have you been waiting for me here all this time?" Lily slowly shook her head. "I woke up in the middle of the night and decided to simply kill some time here. I wonder if I'm getting old. Whenever this happens, I usually come here to think. Still, I did have a feeling you'd be coming back, so that was part of the reason too." "Why do you normally think about here? What do you normally think about here?" "All sorts of things." Lily didn't say anything else. She must have fallen deep in thought. Her whisper reached my ears even from this distance. However, compared to that whisper, some of her previous words would pass by me and go too far, or wouldn't reach me properly. She appeared to have been testing how low her voice could go with me still hearing it, almost like she was fine-tuning a sonar system. It was a bit too complicated for me, so instead I simply walked over to the counter where I could finally see her sitting in a chair. She looked up at me. "What were you doing outside at such late hour?" "I went out for a walk, but ended up getting lost." Lily's expression clouded over. "Not many people come to our mountains, which made this area a relatively popular suicide spot." "Really?" "As you can see, we don't have that many guests in this inn. Usually only 2 or 3, even during the high season. And most of them are our regulars. It's rare to have even a single guest during the off-season." "I was fine, though." "That I can see." As I imagined what Lily could be thinking about here at night, she continued. "I've been working here for a long time. I've seen many guests that come back, and many that didn't." "What kind of guests didn't come back?" "Some were found, others we didn't," Lily said with a sigh. I remembered the mountain I saw from the mansion's window. It was covered with trees from top to bottom. You couldn't even make out the roads. It couldn't have been easy to find a person in there. Can I tell you something odd?" "Sure." In retrospect, all those guests had a peculiar air that separated them from the rest. Well, I imagined they'd come off as different compared to regular tourists. I suppose so, but I don't think it's that simple. It wasn't just their personality or a few individual quirks. When I saw them, the difference I'd feel was about as large and obvious as the sudden change of color or shape on an object. How do I look to you? I don't want you to take this the wrong way, but I noticed that you have that same kind of air about you. Although there's something unusual about it in your case. When I first saw you, I only felt that way about half of you. Well, long story short, I was worried for you too, though maybe in a slightly different way from Nane. Perhaps she was saying the truth. I grew curious about her method of sensing these things, but it probably wasn't something that could be explained overnight. Your face is all red, Lily suddenly said. I touched my cheek, feeling it cold as ice. I might have been warmly dressed, but I did spend most of the night outside. A fairly natural consequence, but being so deep in thought, I didn't notice it at all. I think you should take a shower before going to bed. Do you want me to heat up the bath? No, I'll be fine. I waved my hand in denial while she made a troubled expression. Then can I at least make you something warm to drink? I'd love that. I felt like I'd make her worry even more if I refused, so I had her deliver the drink to my room. I turned on the heater as I returned to the room and changed into my inside clothes. I combed my hair for a while, then tidied up my room to kill some time. I moved everything from the table as well as the coat and the chair out of sight. Finishing that, I looked out the window. It was dark outside. I couldn't even see the moon. Lily knocked on my door. As I took the tray from her, she glanced at the heater in my room. It should grow much colder tonight, but it's a good idea to keep the heater on when you sleep. I nodded. You can keep the tray in your room. Thank you very much. So is she going to go and get Sachiko or not? Like she promised. Don't mention it, said Lily with a smile. She then closed the door. I placed the tray on the table, sat down in the nearby chair, and picked up the cup. It warmed my frozen hand through the porcelain coating. I could tell by the sweet smell that the liquid inside was cocoa. There was also a small plate on the tray with cookies and strawberry jam, or at least some sweets that looked very much like that. I gave the cookies a careful look as I continued sipping my cocoa. A lot happened tonight. It felt like it had been ages since I'd been to this room. I thought about Sachiko. I felt responsible for her ending up in that dark cave. It wasn't Nane's words that caused it all. Regardless of what happened, there was no way she could have reached the cave leading to the other side all by herself. It was a place for beings like myself, and only I could know the way to it. I didn't know how, but my existence probably led her there somehow. When I came to, I realized that both the cup and the sweet plate were empty. Walking for so long must have made me hungrier than I thought. I glanced at the bed, but didn't feel sleepy at all. After thinking for a few moments, I placed the empty cup on the tray, picked it up, then left the room. Beings like myself. Doctors or something else? Lily was still behind the counter in the lobby when I came down the stairs. Is something the matter? Thank you very much for the treats. Having a hard time falling asleep? Asked Lily as she took the tray from me and shoved it in the cupboard. Seems that way. I might not be one to talk, but it's healthier to go to sleep while it's still dark. I agree, I said with a nod, then asked if it wasn't colder in here. I'm used to it. It doesn't bother me when I'm so deep in thought. Why do you do your thinking here in the lobby? That's a good question. It would take a while to explain, though. How long exactly? Quite long. I wouldn't want you to freeze to death while listening to me at any rate. She said we would have plenty more opportunities to talk. However, I didn't feel like being alone right now. Besides, there was something I wanted to ask her. Can we maybe talk in my room then? Lily paused to think for a few seconds, then asked me if I wanted more cocoa. Yes, please. Lily nodded. Then we can talk until we finish the cup. Actually, I was getting pretty bored here by myself too. Lily stood up, took out the tray from the cupboard again, then stepped out from beyond the counter. I returned to my room and turned up the heat a bit. Where is Sachiko in all of this? The last we know in real life, she was walking away from Nane. That was it. I hope she's in her room fast asleep. I waited in front of it until I heard a knock at the door. Opening the door, I saw Lily standing there in an apron. There were 2 cups on the tray she carried, as well as a cloth bag hanging from her right elbow. We sat down at the table facing each other. Lily handed me one of the cups, then picked the other one up and took a sip. Back in the past, my friend would go out at night, just like you, and I'd wait for her in the lobby like this. You have to pass by it regardless of which entrance you use. Who was it? The same friend I mentioned to you before, the one that went missing. I remembered Lily's horror story from 2 days ago. So that was a real story after all. I dramatized it a little, but it's true that my friend disappeared. You may remember how I said that she and I both lived here for a long time, and there was no need to worry about her getting lost or anything, but that time it was different. It happened shortly after her young daughter passed away. How did she pass away? She drowned in a river. I almost couldn't believe it at first, as the rivers here are really shallow. We had lots of rain over a period of a few weeks, and the increase in water apparently loosened the riverbed. It was like she stepped into quicksand and ended up being sucked underwater. My friend's husband passed away sometime before that, too. Anyway, she was severely depressed during that period. Lily picked up her cup, which reminded me that I hadn't even started my drink yet. Either way, I lifted my cup as well. The sweet aroma of the cocoa washed over my nostrils as I drew the cup closer to my lips. She was always such a high-spirited and cheerful person, but after the incident, she began shutting herself up in her room. Even when we'd meet once in a blue moon, she would barely speak. One day, around the time I started thinking about how I should do something for her before things spiraled out of control, I spotted her going out to the inner yard. When I approached her, she actually had her usual cheerful expression. I asked her what she was doing. She told me she spotted a rare butterfly through her window. A butterfly? Yes, she used to collect insects as a hobby. I asked her if she wanted me to bring an insect net, but she refused. Anyway, seeing her like that relieved me a little. I figured she managed to get over it somehow. She resumed her work as usual and went back to talking like she used to. She even began smiling again. I heard a clang. I glanced down to see Lily's cup on the tray. But after a few days, she went outside and never came back. I couldn't see what was inside her cup. I thought about all sorts of things as I waited for her at the counter. Where was she right now? Why didn't she tell me anything? What was the name of that rare butterfly she spotted? You didn't go looking for her? I looked for her everywhere I could think of, but I had a feeling I wouldn't find her. I didn't really think she'd return even when I was waiting in the lobby. I don't know why I felt that way, but I was almost certain I was right. But I didn't have a similar feeling, nor did I suspect anything back when she was still around. So I think the cause that made her disappear lies somewhere beyond my knowledge. Maybe somewhere in her room, seeing how she used to lock herself up in there so often. I felt my throat getting dry, so I took a sip of cocoa. But I digress. You want to know why I spend my nights behind the counter. Probably because that place had always been where I spent the most time thinking. I wondered if she was still waiting for her friend, but it wasn't really my business to pry. Instead, I asked about something I found curious. The premonitions you were talking about, that was the same feeling you talked about when I came back tonight, right? Yes. You said that only half of me made you feel it, though. It was very odd, I admit. How about now? I don't feel it that strongly anymore. The anxiety in my heart let up with her words. The half had probably been me. If her intuition was on point, the only remaining issue was the question of my existence. I see. I grew curious about the exact mechanism that drove her premonition, but I didn't feel she'd be able to explain it in a manner comprehensible to me. That's right. Lily raised her face as she pulled out something from the bag she had placed by her chair. It was the doll I gave her 2 days ago. I'll return this to you. She gave her a doll. I took the doll from her hands and gave it a look. The stains had vanished along with any trace of loose threads. It looked more colorful than before. That! Same doll! Got it! You actually had to strain your eyes to make out any traces of the stain at the doll's mouth. What do you think? I couldn't completely get rid of the stains, but I still think it came out pretty well. I'll be honest, I never expected it to be this clean. I'm glad to hear it. I looked at the doll's face one more time. Its perpetual smile seemed to beam with pride. Looking at its face made me feel a mixture of sadness and bittersweet joy, so much so that I ended up knitting my brows. Well, I suppose it's about time I was on my way. Lily placed her empty cup and the saucer beneath it on the tray. I gulped down the remaining cocoa still left on the bottom of my cup. It felt like ice. Did you invite me for tea because I gave you that feeling? Or did you invite me for tea because I gave you that feeling? Back then, I was just curious about Nane's new friend. I placed my empty cup on the tray. However, Lily remained seated. Her eyes traveled between the doll and my face. You'll think I'm strange, but... What is it? It's the first time I told anyone about this. I might have all sorts of feelings and premonitions, but I normally keep them to myself. Then why did you tell me? You remind me of my friend a lot, and I thought to keep this to myself, but... Lily's gaze shifted to the doll. I never learned why my friend left us, but in your case, I feel like it's somehow related to that doll. I was flabbergasted by the keenness of her intuition. However, I made sure not to let the surprise show on my face. Her remark completely overlapped with my own conclusion. Why do you think that? It's mostly just my intuition, but after my friend's daughter passed away, she carried a memento of hers everywhere. I felt like this doll had a similar history. I see. Lily's dark brown eyes gazed at the doll. It belongs to my friend. I too shifted my eyes to the clean doll. She would confide in it when things got tough, but I don't think she needs it anymore. She's not exactly at an age to play with dolls anymore, and I feel the doll itself was getting frustrated by not being able to do anything to help. I see. Lily made a faint smile. She stood up with her bag hanging from her elbow and picked up the tray. I did the same and opened the door for her. Thanks. I saw a whole bunch of leaves scattered by the door. Are you going to clean them up tomorrow morning too? Yes. What about you? I'll go for a walk after I get some sleep. That's a good idea. Let's have another chat if the opportunity swings by. Sure. Good night. And with that, Lily left the room. After saying goodbye, I closed the door. I hate my theory because I think it's right. Tips 2, second trip. At the end of the second trip has been unlocked. Well, let's read that real quick. Looks like Sachiko is safe and sound in her bed, at least. Let's read that tip. Tips 2, at the end of the second trip. Wake up! It looks incredible outside. Feeling like someone was calling out to me, I opened my eyes. The seats of the bus trembled as the driver skillfully navigated through the crooked country road. I had finally managed to fall asleep just earlier, but I didn't feel like I could repeat the feat again. Resigning myself to my fate, I instead looked out the window. There was no point to even confirm that the seat next to me had been unoccupied. The voice that woke me up came from a distant memory. A friend that used to be by my side was no longer here. I said that, but it wasn't like she had passed away or anything. It was just that one day she forgot all her memories about me. She probably did it consciously, too. I still couldn't understand the reason why. We had known each other since we were little. She had always been a little strange, but I simply couldn't imagine her ending up like that given her personality. The bus finally reached a mountain path. Looking out the window, I started spotting patches of snow as we drove uphill. The amount of snow increased the higher we went. By the time my ears started ringing from the pressure difference between the lowlands and the mountain, the snow walls around the road had exceeded the bus's height. I remember my friends saying how the sight reminded her of Moses and the Red Sea. Who said that? Was that Sachiko who said that? The tour conductor stood up from her seat and began talking about our trip. Basically, we could do whatever we wanted as long as we returned to the bus on time. She then began explaining the two alternate courses the passengers were free to choose from, one for beginners, another for the more experienced. The bus stopped almost at the same time as her explanation ended. The tour guide reminded us of the departure time one more time before the bus doors opened. Time to get tipsy. I thought we did that with tips 3, from Narasaki's perspective. The passengers scattered, each of them going in their chosen direction. Reminiscing about the last time I'd been here, I turned 360 degrees to take in the snowy panorama surrounding me. The sky was clear and blue above the white mountains, just like back then. Hey, so where do we go for the beginner's course? She asked me. Weren't you listening? Well, I wasn't. I thought you would anyway. I guess we both got a bit overly excited by the snow, I deflected. Oh, well then let's follow where everyone else is going. I didn't want to panic over small details like this, and she wasn't the type to complain about them either. We found the longest train of people nearby and mixed in with them, eventually entering a relatively small wooden structure. Inside, we found a souvenir shop and a cable car station. We observed a line of tourists buying tickets for the cable car. We did the same and lined up beyond them. From a closer look, I realized it was a trolley bus, not a cable car. I checked the faces of people around us as we waited. I hadn't memorized the faces of our tour mates, but I was pretty sure I'd never seen these people before. Seemed like we had mixed in with an entirely different group. She was looking around as well, probably thinking the same thing. Who is she with? Who is this person with? If the seat beside is unoccupied, then who is this? I've never ridden a trolley bus before, she said. Me neither. Seemed like she had grown a little worried. Looks like it's going through a tunnel, I said. She replied. Once the trolley bus had parked next to us, we boarded it with the rest of the tourists. The seat at the front was open, so I sat down there. We had the same spot back then, too. The same speedometer caught my eyes as back then. The tunnel I could see through the front window was dark and narrow. Being in a bus racing through that tunnel at a relatively high speed was quite thrilling. Back then, I didn't really have time to enjoy it, though. We were looking at the trolley bus timetable to confirm whether we could get back to our bus in time. but we weren't sure what to do or how long it would take at all, so we couldn't even make an educated guess. The trolley bus stopped. We arrived at the place that looked a lot like the wooden structure we'd left, with an almost identical souvenir shop and bus station. Relying on my old memories, I left the souvenir store and ascended the concrete stairs. I opened the door at the top of the stairs and entered a lookout area. The dark mountain range extended in front of me in the distance. The lookout was built at an angle that allowed a full view of the mountains, provided the weather was clear. Layers of snow covered the mountains like a set of beautiful white roots sparkling under the blue sky. I had been to a lot of places, but nowhere else could I see colors like that. Confirming that the scenery hadn't changed over the years, I drew away from the railing and found a bench to sit down on further back. This time I simply took in the scenery over the heads of the other tourists. Eventually a group came in through the door and completely blocked my field of view. A guide began introducing the mountain, talking over gasps of awe from the newcomers. I closed my eyes, forming the scenery of the mountain in my mind, as well as myself sitting next to my friend. Unable to find the words to express myself, I simply shifted my eyes from one corner of the breathtaking scenery to the other. She was better with words than me, so I gave up on coming up with something to do the scenery justice, and instead waited for her to say something. However, as unusual as that was, she remained silent as well. Instead, she seemed to have been taken in by the scenery to talk. The mountains were indeed amazing, but she was gazing at the white plains extending below them. Wait, is this Nane? Is this Lily? This is Nane or Lily. This isn't Sachiko. The guide's speech ended and the lookout fell silent as the group left. Only a few families didn't seem to belong to any group, still lingered around. "You're not going to join the walk down, young lady?" asked a man that had unexpectedly sat down behind me a bit earlier. I was in my late 20s, so I looked around to confirm whether he wasn't addressing someone else. But there was no one else around, so I nodded. As I had a closer look, the man looked like he was in his 50s or 60s. His thick, naked wrists peeking out from under his coat, indicating that he either did sports or worked in the fields. Both required quite a bit of physical strength. Oh, this is a real route, Buster. Okay, cool. "The scenery is amazing down there. You almost wouldn't believe it's Japan." "What about you? Are you not going?" I didn't have much experience speaking to someone in his age group, which made me somewhat hesitant. Nonetheless, I ended up responding to him anyway. "I ran out of breath, so I decided to take a breath here. Besides, I've already been there like 100 times. The man looked at me. "You don't look like a part of the tour. Are you traveling alone?" I wore weathered clothes that favored mobility over style and had a large backpack on my shoulders. I must have looked like a wilderness camper, truth be told. "You could say that." "How long have you been traveling?" "About half a year now." "That's nice," said the man. He then went on, "It's best to travel while you're still young. Do you have a goal of some sort?" I mulled over his question for a bit. I began my trip because I thought it would help me understand why my friend had lost all her memories of me. It was prompted by my trip to a zoo half a year ago. That day, I felt like I saw a side of her I'd never known before. And I felt like I could find out even more if I retraced our shared steps. So wait, no, this isn't Sachiko. Her hair's brown. Sachiko's is black. It was hard to explain it in concrete terms, though. I thought about it some more on my train ride home, but I couldn't come up with anything in the end. Then I figured I'd get off at the same station we'd used to in the past. I guess I don't really have much of a goal. I just got a long break from work, so I gave him one side of the story. The man continued to ask me questions for some time. I told him about the route that led me here and mentioned a few things that happened along the way. As we ran out of things to discuss and fell silent, the man glanced at the clock. "Would you like to read a book?" would you like to read a book? I reached into my backpack and took out a paperback novel I'd been reading on the bus. I don't care much for books. They're all just a pile of lies anyway. He shifted his gaze to the dam at the bottom of the mountain range. Back when I was a youngin', we didn't have electricity here. The small villages all had diesel plants, but they kept failing all the time. So when I was in elementary school, I had my teacher tell me all about how their engines worked. They weren't all that complicated, but without any knowledge, even the easiest fix would have been a huge hurdle, let me tell you. Are you a mechanic? No, I didn't become that. We didn't even have electricity, but we were short on food too. So I worked in the fields and would go sell the extra yield to the neighboring villages. And, well, I couldn't tell you how they learned about me knowing a thing or two about gizmos, but one day they asked me to fix a power plant. I see. He was telling me about a long time ago before I was born. I understood why he specialized in the sciences, but that didn't explain why he didn't like books. Could just be a generational gap. Well, all things have a reason, the man said. I couldn't tell whether he was talking about the fact he didn't like books, or if he had already returned to the issue of my trip not having a goal. Before I had a chance to confirm that, it was time for me to board my trolley bus. I said goodbye to the man and descended from the lookout. I returned to the bus stop in the wooden building and killed some time in the souvenir store while waiting for the trolley bus to come. I spotted some cookies and chocolate named after the location. You could see those a lot in places like this. There were also some local character goods. I personally found the plushie of a snow chicken particularly cute. It was a bird with feathers, whose feathers would turn white in winter. There's a big statue of it by the entrance. There were also some pictures of it for sale. I suddenly realized my friend was probably looking for this bird from the lookout. I didn't realize it back then, but it was quite obvious in retrospect given how much of a bird lover she was. My trolley bus would soon arrive, so I moved over to the bus stop. I ended up not buying anything. I almost bought a tasty-looking Batera, but then I remembered seeing it cheaper at the main station, which made me change my mind. Okay, it just occurred to me. So, when Lily's friend disappeared, I wonder if that means that they didn't actually disappear, but they, like, lost their mind or their memories or something. Hi, Dim. That's what I'm, like, because that's Lily. And that makes me wonder if this is all Lily's, like, something that Lily went through. It makes me wonder if Lily's friend disappearing is, like, her consciousness going away. Same with Nagasaki, which makes me wonder. I decided to buy it later so I could enjoy it in the comfort of my train compartment on my way back. I was the first person to board the bus. I took my seat and waited. This time I spotted some familiar faces among the people who boarded after me. Once the time came to leave and the other tourists had assembled, the guide made sure that everyone was present. After that, the bus rolled out of the station and toward its next destination. It was the heaviest waterfall in the country. Last time, she made the 30-minute trip up that perilous mountain path all by herself just to reach the waterfall at the end of it. I'd given up as soon as I saw the slope and waited for her at a nearby cafe. This time, I'd go where she went. I glanced at the neighboring seat. She looked out the window with narrowed eyes. "We should bring a pair of sunglasses next time," she remarked. These tips are not very helpful. Well, that'll bring my stream to an end. Yet, you did come just at the right time, Dim. Okay, ladies and gentlemen, that was day 12 of SeaBed. I've got an idea of what's going on. Based off of what we learned today, the dialogue that we heard, Anyway, I'll be back next Sunday to continue my playthrough of SeaBed. It'll be episode 13, Lucky 13, huh? Okay, Thanks everyone for being here. Nintendo Fan, Buster, Shardale, Hollywood Hawk, Demlord, and of course shout out to the lurkers and everyone watching this on YouTube afterwards. My heart is like pounding in my chest for the implications that this stream just gave us for this. Okay, I'll see you all next Sunday, and I'll of course be back on Tuesday to play something else. Do I know what I'll be playing yet? Not yet, but it'll be something else on Tuesday. See you guys then. On behalf of East Asia Soft, I have been Skull. Have yourselves a great day and a great week. Happy Easter, everyone, and I will see you all next time. Bye-bye.